Hey guys, welcome back to TechPP. And today we thought of doing some real informal and unscripted video about the comparison between the two newly launched smartphones, which a lot of people are really talking about: the Xiaomi Mi A3 and Realme 5. A lot of people would be talking both of them and seeing like how they compare with each other, just because they are running the same processor, the Snapdragon
665.
yeah, and other than that, they have the same 720p HD plus displays, AMOLED LCD, that we will come to that later, and both of them are splash resistant. So what we are doing today is just go through each of these things, like the features, and eventually the performance, the cameras, and try to see if the pricing for both of these are competitive enough, or they really not trying to compete with each other. So this is what we try to do, this very informal. So please excuse if I end up rambling. But yeah, he's a pro, so I'm just backing on him to proceed. Sumak, so let's start with the differences.
Okay, so the first obvious difference would be the UI. I mean, the Mi A series, the A stands for Android One, so it's stock Android on the Mi A3, whereas it's Color OS on the Realme 5. We did hear some rumors about a proprietary OS, so it might come later, but for now it is Color OS. So the obvious difference would be in the smoothness. Stock Android, of course, feels much smoother than Color OS. But on the other hand, Color OS has a lot of nifty features to customize your phone and make it the way you want it to work. So that depends on what you are looking forward to. If you want customizations, then ColorOS is the way to go. But if you want a very vanilla Android experience with no lags and stutters, and more importantly, if you want an extended software support, that's where the Android One program comes into play.
Okay, so I have a slightly different take on this. I'm not saying I'm anti-stock Android, but I have seen, be it on any other Android One device or on a Pixel device, it tends to get slower and there will be lags. From my experience, at least with the A1, A2, both of these had started getting these stutters and lags over a period of time. So I'm not sure if A3 would carry that forward. I hope it doesn't. Doesn't mean to say that all the ColorOS devices are like smooth and perform better throughout its lifetime. I'm not saying that, but let's not just get blinded by stock Android being really better. Of course, as you mentioned, ColorOS does come with its own set of nifty additions, which you probably have to do on your own with stock Android. So that's with the major difference. Let's just try to get it out of the way. And the second one is with the design. So yeah, so you have been using both of them.
Yeah, so the Mi A3 feels really premium in the hand, not just because it has a glass back, but also it has some nice curves on the edges, which makes it really fit in your hand really well, which is not the case with the Realme 5 because it's a pretty big device at 6.5 inches. And it's really ergonomic to hold the Mi A3, and that's something that I've been missing a lot of late because every device that's being launched is like 6.5, 6.6 inches. So it's refreshing to hold something that fits in your hand easily and you can just use it one-handed.
Yeah, the counter argument would be that it has a bigger display. Many people like to use bigger displays on phones.
Sure.
So yeah, it's like it depends on what sort of a person you are. If you want to use it in one hand or if you want a really big display, that goes either ways. And also with the design, it is glass versus plastic.
True.
So of course glass really looks premium and less scratch prone as compared to the plastic ones. Of course, Realme does make it look like glass with their whatever magic things that they're doing with the back. But of course, PA3 does look really better and premium.
The thing is, you need to use a case with both of them because with plastic, you have a fear of getting it scratched, whereas with glass, if it falls, you'll just end up breaking it. So yeah, it's just based on the looks because you're anyhow going to put a case on it eventually.
Right. So the third difference would be AMOLED versus LCD, like we briefly discussed it in the beginning. So right now we have AMOLED on the Mi A3, LCD on the Realme 5, and the experience is definitely visible, I would say.
Yes, especially if you go outdoors and if you're using your phone, the AMOLED panel is much brighter. And yes, if you do look up close, you can see pixels on both. I mean, it's a 720p display after all. But the overall experience of using an AMOLED panel is much better. The colors really pop out. And this is very much evident if you're playing games or if you're watching content on YouTube or something like that. So it's like the overall experience is much better on an AMOLED panel, and that's something that all of you would know, especially the black levels are really high and
Right, and also the Gorilla Glass. We have Gorilla Glass 5 on the Mi A3 versus 3 on or 3 Plus as they say on the Realme 5. Uh, but yeah, Gorilla Glass 5 on both back and front on the Mi A3. Of course, Realme 5 has a plastic back, so it doesn't count that way. So the next one would be because of AMOLED, we have in-display fingerprint scanner on the Mi A3, which is a novelty these days. I'm not really sure if it's functionally better than a capacitive fingerprint scanner on the back, like on the Realme 5. Both are really fast. I would say the capacitive one is slightly faster, but yeah, it's a in thing right now. Like
right. And I think it's the most affordable phone to come with an in-display fingerprint scanner.
Probably, yeah.
So it's like a cool factor that you have on your phone.
That's right. And the next one, where Realme 5 sort of fights back with all the other things going against it, is the battery. So 5000 mAh on the Realme 5, 4030 on the A3. But yeah, I mean, of course, it's a you have been using it for a while now.
Yeah.
What do you think? Like AMOLED and smaller screen, will it really help with a smaller battery on?
So the thing is that first of all, it's good that Xiaomi gave a 4000 mAh battery because the Mi A3 had a 3000 mAh thing, and it was pretty sad to see that. But even with the 4000 mAh battery, one thing that I observed was standby drain was pretty bad. And as we were talking about it earlier, it's the case with pretty much every stock Android device. And I don't know why that's the case. Probably Google needs to do some optimization on their end. But yeah, so the standby time on the Mi A3 isn't too high. So if you're resting your phone for a long amount of time, then you will see battery drain. Whereas when you keep using the phone, there's not much of drain. So you can easily get through a day. It's not that you can't. But yeah, and whereas when you compare it with the Realme 5, the 5000 mAh battery is just nuts. You can just go on and on with it.
And color OS is recently optimized as well.
Yes.
Okay, and the next one is with the charger. So we have 10-watt charger packed in on both of them, but only difference is Mi A3 does support 18-watt charger. So if you go ahead and buy it on B.com, I think it's available for $499, $399. So yeah, so that is one more difference. The next one in my list is with the storage.
So this is one area which is actually pretty surprising, that the Mi A3 has UFS 2.1 storage, and for a phone that sells for about 13,000 rupees, that's actually a pretty big deal. And it is in fact noticeable if you launch a lot of apps, or if you're copying content from your phone within your phone and things like that. So yeah, it is a luxury to have in this price category, whereas the Realme 5 has just eMMC storage. So that's just a nice, good to have thing.
Okay, so and the next one is with the extended storage. Now we have a dedicated micro SD slot on the Realme 5, while this comes with a hybrid slot. I mean, it's still a good thing because I think Mi A2 lacked even that.
Yeah, they didn't have a.
Yeah, so they have brought back the hybrid SIM at least. So yeah, so that's about the fifth difference or sixth one. And the next one is with regards to the Type C and the micro USB. For whatever reason, Realme is still sticking to the micro USB on Realme 5. The 5 Pro does have USB Type C.
I was surprised to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I read somewhere that the difference in terms of the cost is not really that high. So either it is like, getting rid of the inventory that they have with micro USB. I'm not really sure. Not really an expert in that case, but yeah, it does come with micro USB as compared to the Type C on the A3.
I think it's also probably to do with the consumer base that they're looking at. So a lot of people switching from phones priced less than 10,000 may still be using a Type C, micro USB cable. So I think that's where
easily available and already. Yeah, makes sense. And the last one I think is the IR blaster, which is available on Mi A3. I don't know, they didn't speak too much about it, but I think it's quite a big deal, especially with the segment that we are looking at. It's quite handy and useful, all the IR blasters that we get on Xiaomi phones. So let's move to the camera. So
this is a pretty major difference in terms of the specs as well as the end output. So the Mi A3 has a 48 megapixel camera. That's like the in thing right now. Every manufacturer is putting out a 48 megapixel camera. So yeah, the camera quality is actually very good, and this is something that we've been seeing from the Mi A1 and the Mi A2. So the camera has been a highlight of the Mi A series, and that tradition is just being continued with the Mi A3, and we're glad that that's happening, because there's it's a bridge which is it's a gap which is being bridged by the Mi A series. There are not a lot of budget smartphones have good cameras. Wherein at a price point of 13,000, the Mi A3 offers a really good camera experience.
That's what people tend to expect from Xiaomi with the Mi A series with very good cameras and stock Android experience. So they have delivered that with the Sony IMX primary camera and Sony IMX 586, and the secondary camera both have 8 megapixel wide angle f2.2, so hardly any difference. Both wide angle cameras perform decently well.
Yeah, they're pretty
Yeah,
good.
both are really good. And the third one is the 2 megapixel depth sensor. Again, for the portrait shots, I would say Mi A3 slightly gets better with the HD detection and surely gets it better. And the last one is the macro lens. So, what do you think?
Yeah. So I feel that the macro lens is sort of I wouldn't say unnecessary. It's there, of course. Anything that's there additionally is always good, but it's not overwhelming. It's just a 2 megapixel sensor after all, so you can't expect a lot out of it. But in good daylight, you can end up capturing some good shots if you get really close to the objects. But I would have liked probably a telephoto lens, but again, we're looking at a price category which is around 10 to 12,000, 13,000 rupees. So it's not really feasible to put in everything in a phone that costs this much. So if you ignore all these negatives, the cameras on both phones are actually pretty good, and for their price, they're the best that you can get.
But in general, you would definitely say Mi A3 performs.
The Mi A3 performs much better, yes, undoubtedly.
Okay, now coming to the general performance, which Sumuk talked about in the beginning itself, because of the OS and probably slightly to do with the display, it feels much smoother and better on the A3 as compared to the Realme 5. And color OS, yeah, like you were mentioning, it has much more features as compared to the stock Android. So those who are sort of used to a skinned Android, be it MIUI or ColorOS, would probably still prefer to go this way, because stock Android, even though minimalistic, all these things are nice, it's not really feature rich.
Correct. So the thing with stock Android is you got to live with whatever you have. So what the settings, and then you can't customize stuff like your notification. Exactly, yeah. Whereas in ColorOS, you have an option to either use the nav bar, you can use the stock Android gestures, or you can use ColorOS own gestures. So you have options there to choose from. So you can check out the card here, our tips and tricks for ColorOS. It'll surely help you. So yeah, things like these are kind of areas wherein people might get inclined towards ColorOS. But then again, I know a lot of people who dedicatedly look at phones saying that, okay, this has stock Android, so I'll pick this over others. So there are people on both sides.
But those sort of people, do they even consider a ColorOS device? I'm not really sure. So yeah, I mean, if you are on the fence, really not decided about which sort of OS that you prefer, this is what are the pros and cons. So think and go ahead with your choice. And finally, the battery life. We spoke about Realme 5 having bigger one, but still it's not that wide a difference in terms of it.
Yeah,
but eventually, yeah, you do end up probably getting a little more screen on time.
Of course, AMOLED is known to save battery if you use a dark wallpaper and stuff like that.
But sadly, the standby time, as you mentioned, is not really great.
And stock Android doesn't have a dark mode on stuff like that, so you just have to stick to whatever is there.
That's right. And finally, the RAM management, it's sort of similar on both.
Yeah, I was surprised actually, because ColorOS is known to kill apps in the background, and
now even stock Android is doing that.
so it's pretty much the same. There's no.
So anyone who is buying either of these two phones, you probably should go to the battery optimization section in the settings and sort of switch off the battery optimization for the apps that you use a lot.
Also, I think it's important to say that we use the higher RAM variants of both phones.
Correct. So both of these we have mostly 6 GB RAM versions of both of these phones. Yeah. So our experience with RAM management is probably won't be the same if we were using the 4 GB
ones. The base variant of the Realme 5 is 332.
Correct.
So with 3 GB of RAM, you might have some.
We don't really know.
We don't know how it's going to fare.
Right. So just to summarize, I think we spoke a lot already. For 2,000 rupees more, I think Mi A3 starts at 12,999 for the 464 GB version. Realme 5 starts at 9,999, but that's for the 332. So for 464, it costs 10,999. So for rupees 2,000 more, what are you getting on the Mi A3?
So yeah, you get the stock Android, of course, that's the major highlight. And then you get better overall performance. I mean, the chipset is the same, of course, but performance is better in terms of the smoothness in the UI And I felt app launching is faster on the Mi A3.
And then we have the better camera, we
Of
have better
course.
display, AMOLED, so
Yeah.
faster storage, UFS 2.1,
Yeah, of
and in-display fingerprint scanner for those who care, and finally the design, of course, yeah. So better looking and glass.
It's premium.
Right, and but while you get all those things for 2000 rupees more, what are the things that you are missing out if you are not buying the Realme 5? One is the battery,
Bigger battery,
it's
of
bigger
course.
battery and bigger display, so 6 versus 6.5 inch, dedicated macro lens. For what it's worth, I mean, we really don't think that it's adding too much of a value, but it's still
still
a selling
there.
point, and it's something that you can really, show off with your friends. So if you are into
Yeah.
that really helps. And dedicated micro SD slot and the customizations with the color OS. So guys, this was what we think is an in-depth comparison with the Realme 5 and the Mi A3. But a lot of people were already asking about the Mi A3, how it compares with Realme 5 Pro.
think
I mean,
it's
of
not-
course, it's not Full HD Plus,
Yeah.
and it's not Snapdragon 712,
True.
but overall, I don't know how that would fare. So do let us know if you want us to do this sort of video which is very informal and very unscripted, but still comparing two phones with our actual thoughts. So do let us know whether you like this video, and yeah, thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. See ya.
Bye.